Living Power with Dan Hurd.
Today, what we're going to take a look at is picking up with verse 17, and that is that you need to choose your first step wisely. When you take that first step of doing what it is that God wants you to do, when you have this sense of destiny, this sense of motivation, this sense that I think this is what God wants me to do, and I need to take that first step. What is that first step that you need to take? And how should you take that first step? So, what happens in verse 17, then I said to them, now this is after Nehemiah has taken the walk around Jerusalem and around the wall. He gathers all the people together and he speaks to them and he says, then I said to them, you see the trouble we're in? Jerusalem lies in ruins and its gates have been burned with fire. Come, let's rebuild the wall of Jerusalem and we'll no longer be in disgrace. I also told them about the gracious hand of my God on me and what the king had said to me. So he tells them what happened and how the king provided all of these things. And so their response was, well, let's start building. So they began this good work. Now that in and of itself was a miracle. The fact that these people who had gotten lazy and didn't want to finish the job, and one of the reasons was that they hadn't finished the job was also because they were afraid of being attacked. They were being opposed. And so there was this sense of failure, this sense of loss, and some of them just didn't want to do the work. But now all of a sudden they get motivated. God does something in their lives also, and their faith is stimulated, and they say, okay, let's go do something. Let's rebuild the wall. But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the Ammonite, by the way, don't name your children Sanballat. It's just not a good name to name your child. Tobiah, you know, maybe that's a fairly decent name, but Sanballat is not a good name. And then there's another guy that comes along, Geshem the Arab, and they started mocking and ridiculing Nehemiah and the people for what they were doing. And they were like, what is this you're doing? Are you rebelling? Are you rebelling against the king? And they started planting the seed of doubt and trying to cause problems already. And it actually gets worse, as we'll see at a later time. And so I said to them, the God of heaven will give us success. We, his servants, will start rebuilding. But as for you, shut up. That's what he said. And he basically just said to them, you have no right here. You don't have any right. You don't have any legitimacy here. So back off, dude. That was the actual Hebrew. Back off, dude. Now, Nehemiah didn't investigate the walls when he walked around the walls. He didn't investigate those walls to decide whether or not to go ahead with the project. That wasn't why he went and walked around. He wanted to have a better picture of what they were up against, so he could be prepared to answer as many questions as possible when he announced his vision to the rest of the people. And notice how carefully he took the first significant step in putting his plan into motion. And that's what I want us to take a look at today in this last part of the study. First of all, in verse 17, he defined the conflict and the consequences. He defined the conflict and the consequences. When you take a look at the situation that you have to address, define it. What really is this conflict? What is the real conflict here? Dig down until you find out what is really the problem. Sometimes we start dealing with the results of the problem or the symptoms of the problem, and we've never really defined what the problem is or defined what the conflict is. But you really need to focus in. What is the real conflict here? What is the real problem? For example, when you're, just a real practical thing, if you're dealing with your children and there's a real problem there with that child and you're not able to communicate with that child and that child is in rebellion, well, it's real easy to just start dealing with the rebellion. It's real easy to just start, well, all right, you're grounded. That's real easy, I should know. But what is the real conflict? What's really causing the conflict? You can't solve the problem until you know what the real conflict is. So, define the conflict and the consequences. What are the consequences of this particular conflict? What are the real consequences?